Hi everybody and welcome to another Kalicube Tuesdays. It's 2023 and my first guest is Tatiana Bonneau. Welcome, Tatiana.
Hi, thank you for having me, Jason. Welcome, everyone, and
Brilliant.
Happy New Year.
Oh yeah, Happy New Year 2023. 2022 was pretty rubbish for a lot of people and 2023 I hope will be better for everybody, and you're from Ukraine. I hope there will be some kind of peace or some kind of progress in Ukraine.
I hope so. And I know when 2022 started, we were like, after the COVID, we were like, oh, can it get any worse? And I'm
Yeah.
I'm not daring this year. I'm not daring even saying that. It's like, nope, nope, just say nothing.
No, let's hope for the best for 2023 and not get over optimistic before things start to improve. I'm going to start with my song, the first song of the
Right.
year. A quick hello and we're good to go. Welcome to the show, Tatiana Bonneau.
I feel bad now. I didn't prepare a song.
Brilliant. And your name is Bono. You have a French husband, but you're Ukrainian, and your actual full name,
Yes,
it's a
yes.
double-barreled name, isn't it?
Yeah, I have my father is Bulgarian, my mother is Ukrainian, so it's like a huge mix, but it's Grammaticova Bono, but I don't know which one is harder to pronounce actually. I mean, it's funny, I
Oh,
work with names and naming, and mine is like I have a niece and she calls me Tata Tatiana because she just well, she has Tata, which is the aunt
yeah.
in French, and she adds my name, which I thought is quite cute.
I'd never thought of Tata Tatiana, and that's brilliant.
There
I'm going
you
to say that all the
go.
time. It sounds like a cake.
Yeah.
Right, I'm going to start off. I always start off with people's brand SERPs. Now, really quickly, we've rebranded the podcast, and I think that's an important point to make. It was called With Jason Barnard last year and the year before that. And then we realized that the only people who would ever listen to a podcast called With Jason Barnard is people who know who Jason Barnard is, and there aren't many of those in the world. So we've changed it to Branded Search and Beyond with Jason Barnard. So hopefully we're hitting both areas. One is we say what's inside, which is branded search, but obviously and beyond, because we talk about more than that, and we say who's hosting it, which is me, and that's our domain name. And I can have your comment about that domain name in a moment. I'll bring that back. But in the meantime, we start off with the question that I find most interesting is your brand SERP. Then we will talk about your topic, which is using domains as brand assets. And then we will end with this question, which is either how can your specialization help with branded search, or how does branded search tie in with your specialization? And I think in this particular episode, that's going to be a really easy question. For some, for example, conversion rate optimization, that might be a little bit more difficult. So that's going to be the challenge for the people who come on the show, because the show is aimed at branded search, which is my topic. But hopefully we're going to bring in all of digital marketing with a brand emphasis. So I looked up your name, of course, on Google. First thing I always do with my guests. And that's where I knew you had the double-barreled name. And your company is called Mark Upgrade. And you have your Twitter, your Crunchbase, logo.com with an interview, and LinkedIn, but no personal website. And I find that a little bit strange, and the fact that your company website doesn't rank either. It's not a criticism, it's kind of curiosity on my part.
No, it's cool. I was actually looking forward to that part because I haven't done that myself, obviously. And I'm like, well, why do I have all those pictures? They're all from the same photo session. I need to do something about that.
Right, and oh, that's a really interesting point, because they're from the same photo session, but they're obviously different photos with a different presentation. So if you had had multiple photos from different sessions that all had you on a blank background where you were wearing exactly the same clothes, Google would consider them to be one and the same photo, essentially. And here what it's done is it said, I see these as being distinct photos, and therefore I will rank them all, even though they're the same session. And that's a huge question that people need to ask themselves with their photos, is which photos am I posting, and how many groups of types of photos have I got? And those are obviously different groups of photos, different types of photos, even though in your mind they're from the same session.
Yeah,
And the other
that
thing,
actually makes me think. Yeah, sorry, I'm interrupting you, but that's interesting. I had a guest on my podcast, and she was talking about she had a brand consultant, and they went over something which I haven't even thought people do, but now that I know it, I'm like, that's a good thing to do. So she was actually aware of the photos she's posting on herself, and even down to the point of like what she's wearing and how do those colors go with the colors of her brand to like match all of that. And we're going to talk about later, I think, definitely about brand consistency, and that's something that also, yeah, is interesting to notice.
Right. Well, that's a brilliant point, because what I did, I tricked Google. I didn't do it on purpose, but I had a photo on a blank background. I removed the background, and then I put that same photo on a blue background, Kalicube blue, then a Kalicube red background, and then a Kalicube green background. And Google considers them all to be different photos. So I would get those 3 photos in a row, and it's exactly the same photo. The background color is different. So that's a really good way to brand yourself and only have to take 1 photo.
Cool.
And the other thing is, surprise for you, is you have a knowledge panel. You have
Oh,
a
do
tiny,
I? I didn't even know that.
a tiny, what do they call a tiny knowledge panel sprout? And your KGM ID, Google's identifier for you is /G11F3PG6S6G. And for anybody who's really interested in this kind of geeky stuff, you can join the Kalicube Knowledge Panel Brand Support Group, which is on Facebook at the moment. Come along and join us. It's a lot of fun, and we talk about knowledge panels, we talk about brand SERPs. And if you can see there, the result is exactly the same. That's the result from that KGM ID. And the fact that that result and that result are exactly the same, except for my terrible, terrible design, because it shifts when I switch between them, is indicative that Google has really understood who you are. And your name is obviously unique in that double-barreled sense, but what Google has done is truly understood, and it should be very easy for you to build a knowledge panel. So I would suggest that you create your own website, a personal website, and you build your knowledge panel using that as the reference point.
Very cool. Yeah, thank you. I have my name and my surname as domain names. I just pointed them to my social media because I've never got around to do something with them. But yeah, it's definitely something I've considered, and definitely something I know it's like on my to-do list. It's that saying, the shoemaker's kids go barefoot, or something in those lines. It's a bit that. It's a bit of that.
Right. Yeah, no, the shoemakers never have the best shoes, and the people who run domain companies have the best domains, but don't use them to build sites. But you only need a one-page website with a homepage, potentially an about page, just to show who you are, because Google's actively looking for that. And if you don't do it, it will use your social profiles, but social profiles are rented space, whereas TatianaBonneau.com is owned.
Yeah, exactly. That's something we're very much on the same page with.
Right. So now on to branded search and beyond, and brand names in particular, and using brand names as assets, or domain names rather, as brand assets. The first thing I would say is, do you have to have the .com of your exact brand name?
All right, so that's something that a lot of people are asking, and most of the people in my industry, shall we call it an industry? Most people that deal with domain names as investors, domain brokers, most of them stick to .com because it's been there for 30 years. It's been there for as long as the internet has been there. The .com, it's kind of a brand in itself. It means authority, it means trust. The fact that people naturally, without thinking, regardless of their location, of occupation, when you talk about domain names, that's what comes to mind. And potentially as a second best, their local country extension. But even that it doesn't come close. And we have smartbranding.com, which is a sort of a hub for education that we launched a couple of years ago, because there's so much to say, so much to share as information on the topic. So we kind of decided to put that as a separate thing. So there's a lot of information there on that. And one thing that we do there is we analyze, like we would say, what are the top 200 companies in whatever industry and what domain names do they have? So, and majority of companies we've had, I did some recap of the year, the last 2022, to just sort of for us to have a look at where are we with that, and we are on 80,000 names. We've analyzed 80,000 names. We have over 80,000 names in our database. So that's like across industries, across countries. We've done country lists. We've done like the best companies or the top companies in whatever country. So the statistics are there, and the successful companies, regardless of country, regardless of industry, they do operate on .com domains, and not only .com domains, but .com domains that exactly match their brand name, or even some of them that are like the simplified version of the brand name. They can be called, I don't know, example, enterprise, digital, whatever, and the domain name would be example.com. So I guess to shorten and answer your question, does it have to be a .com? Does it have to be? It doesn't have to be, anything. It's really, it depends on one, what you do, what is your vision for that business, where are you taking it, what is your audience? I guess as with many things, that there isn't just like, oh, if it's whatever, you're gonna be like successful. It doesn't work like that. It also obviously you have to have a good product. You have to have all the elements that go with it. But and again, that's not just my opinion. And I really like a huge part of launching smart branding was to have that data, to have that ongoing search and education for ourselves as well as for the people that I talk to, into that topic. What is a good domain name? What makes a good domain name? And the answer is it depends. It depends on
it always does.
Yeah, it depends on the company, depends on the target audience, and depends on your vision for the company. But if you're building a brand that you want to last, like we're not talking about, you want to build something quickly, get some traffic, get some traction, sell it, and off you go. If you're building a brand that is you want it to last, you want it to be there in 5 years, 10 years, even longer, you want to be independent. You mentioned earlier, you own your name, as opposed to you building a brand on XYZ, whatever social network that can change tomorrow or ban you or whatever. So yeah, if you're building a lasting brand that you want to be independent, definitely a .com that is matching the brand seems to be the way to go.
Right. Brilliant, wonderful. That was a hugely long answer to a very short question,
I know.
but actually a much shorter answer than I would have expected, because you could have talked for hours about that. Now the question is, I would immediately think I want to go for a .com because I would need to communicate the fact that my company website wasn't a .com. So that makes, as soon as I don't have a .com, I move away from what's considered normal, and I need to communicate on that. And the second is, if I don't have an exact match domain name for my company, for my brand, then I have to communicate on that, and it becomes doubly difficult. So would it be fair to say that if I don't have the .com, and even worse, if I don't have a matching brand to domain name, I'm creating myself an awfully huge communications task and expensive?
It is. Yeah, absolutely. And that's something that I'm very glad you mentioned that, because that is something that people don't see. And it's funny, in the announcement you made for my me being a guest on your show, you used a quote by Philip Kotler, that's if you're not a brand, you're a commodity. And I mean, you can tell I'm a fan of the guy. There's another one from him that is something in the lines of, people pay a lot of attention to the cost of getting something, and they should actually also consider, I'm not quoting it, motamo, but they should also consider the cost of not getting it, the cost of not doing it. And that is something that a lot of people don't do, and not just about domain names, but we're not going to go into, like saving people's lives now, but if we're talking about just domain names in our case, and generally investing in your brand, people are always like, oh, that costs that, oh, that costs whatever, and they're not thinking how much is costing you not having that daily, weekly, monthly, yearly. And what you just said, you can get a whatever domain name. If your company is called Example, and you think, oh, $100,000 for example.com is too much, I'm not going to do that, I'm going to get, I don't know, meet us at example.io. That's, every time you need to put that in somebody's head, that's going to cost you money. Every time you need to print that, it's going to cost you money. Every time somebody gives up because they can't be bothered to remember it, or they type something else, they end up on a competitor's website, or whatever. That is all cash that I don't even know how there's probably ways to calculate, at least get some idea, but that's something that should be considered because it's there.
Yeah, and when you're communicating, you're reaching out. We're in the B2B space at Kalicube, and we reach out, we try to get Kalicube into people's mind with the aim, ultimately, that they end up thinking, actually, that's interesting, and they will end up searching the name Kalicube at some point. And from there, you're saying, well, then you've got the brand SERP and my whole kind of domain, which is how do you look when they search that? But one thing that has all brought back to me, I think we talked about it on your show, is Kalicube.com wasn't available. I asked how much it would cost, and they said $6,000. And I thought, I'm not paying $6,000. So I bought Kalicube.pro. And I built this entire communication strategy around Kalicube.pro. Then the price dropped to $1,000 and I bought it. And I then had to backpedal on everything. And it's cost me much more than $5,000 to communicate in the first place. And secondly, now to backpedal. And thirdly, I've now called the SaaS platform Kalicube Pro, which is now on the Kalicube.pro domain. And Google doesn't understand. And I spent 2 years trying to educate Google that Kalicube.pro was the company, and now it's Kalicube Pro is a SaaS, and Kalicube.
And it's your job. You know how to educate Google. Like, imagine.
And so, if you do go down that. Sorry, just to conclude that, is if you do go down the idea of communicating and then you backpedal, it's hugely complicated, hugely time-consuming, and as you said, hugely costly. And those $5,000 suddenly seem cheap.
And you're talking about a sort of a consultancy business that is relatively, like, don't take that badly, but small. But you're not a huge no, you're not some huge global business that is dealing directly with clients, selling products where exactly, like, really you are against, I don't know, the Nikes and Coca-Colas of the world and whatever, or software ways, same thing. If you scale that 5,000, that can be 5 million, easily, and people don't think about that.
Right. And another example that strikes me is MoneyWise, who then became Wise, and they bought Wise.com for some phenomenal sum of money. And you think, oh, that's a huge rebranding exercise, but at scale, that's worth it.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think, and I'm probably biased because obviously, I work with domains, so it's something that, like, for me, it means a lot. But MoneyWise actually, and also Close, they were on .io, I think, and they switched to .com. But those two companies, I actually, not personally, but as a business, we started using them after the upgrades. And the reason is not just, I'm biased. But for me, it's not just because I understand domain names and I know those names are not cheap. And for me, that's a signal that brand, that company, they are committed to their brand, to being around in 5 years, to their customers. That for me is really, really important, because I get, requests from different companies, people, services, like on LinkedIn or in my email saying, oh, we can help you with so-and-so. And it's something I need. And I immediately I look at, where does the email come from? If it's like a Gmail, or if it's get my whatever.io, I'm like, nah, I can't be bothered to even reply. It just goes spam, done. I don't have the time for that. They're probably a great company, they probably whatever, but it just screams, we knew, we didn't have money for the domain name, or we didn't think about it. Either way, not good enough. We're not sure we're going to be there in 5 years, so investing X thousands or 10,000 or whatever thousands in a domain name is not worth it, because we don't know if we're going to be there. That's the message it sends. And
right. So can I change my story from earlier on? I paid $200,000 for Kalicube.com.
No, well, you got it eventually, and you got a good deal. It's, good for you. Yeah, it's good. But actually, it's very good you mentioned that, because and you are working in SEO. You're a techie person, and most of the people actually get to that conclusion of, oh, I should have got that name the hard way. And you got the hard way, but it couldn't be worse. It could have been worse. Like, maybe you would have had to go completely for a rebrand because somebody else got the .com for whatever they got it. How would that have worked, etc. So it's really most of the people, and that's the whole point, I guess, of smartbranding.com that we launched. And generally, when I talk to people, usually they come to me for a particular domain, or they come to me for like they're looking to name a new business or rebrand a business because they have some whatever issues they have with their domain name or generally with their name. And I mean, the advice, I guess, the idea is just taking things seriously, taking domain name seriously. It's always my first advice. It's not, I'm not going to be there telling you, absolutely do that, get that. It's just take it seriously, think about it, learn things about it, because otherwise, things are going to happen anyway. Things happen. I even wrote an article about that. I don't know if I mentioned it to you the last time we spoke, but it's effectively you're going to end up paying for that domain name whether you own it or not, one way or another.
In what sense is the other way? I mean, I ended up paying for the domain name directly to the person who owned it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What's the other cost? The other cost is that communication.
Exactly. The other cost is if you don't get it, you're going to be paying for that confusion. You're going to be, losing traffic. You're going to be losing emails. You're going to have people dropping out or going to, your competitors because they couldn't be bothered, so they didn't find you. Or some of your competitors who are, buying your name as a keyword or whatever in different ways. But you're going to be just spending that money to compensate what you would have had if you just had the name, but you're not going to own it at the end.
Right, and so you really need to keep it simple, if possible, exact match
that,
domain
that
to your
applies
branding.
to everything, yeah. I mean, so simplicity is the ultimate sophistication. That's who said that?
I don't know, but it was probably your friend from earlier on.
No, hold on, I knew that.
Whose name now escapes me.
I don't know. I think it's
next question. Why do you think about that?
But I'm not sure. Yeah.
It will come to you in the middle of the night, and you'll wake up and want to start.
I think it was Exupery, or it was somebody creative. Anyway, yeah.
And imagine I've got my .com domain name. What do you think about the idea of now we've got all of these different .xyz, .io, .tech, .guru, whatever it is? What's the strategy for buying all of those so that your competitors don't do it?
Well, the funny thing is, if you don't have the .com, and I've seen that many times, if you don't have the .com, people end up scrapping around getting everything else they can, because it's like, oh, they got this, oh, they got this, oh, they got this, and there's no end to it. There's so many of them. Yeah. You just can't. If you do have the .com, it's very easy. You just, people ultimately obviously go there naturally, and you can just say that's the only official website we have. That's us. Everything else is not us. And
right.
Again, we're coming back to you just cannot, and I find it absolutely mind-blowing that companies, like we literally recently even reshared it. We have an article on what's the difference between a domain name, a URL, and a website. You have people running companies who don't know that. And it's like, I mean, it's 2023. You don't have to be able to, code a website yourself, but you have to know the basics, and you have to be aware, or pay somebody in your company who is, and sorts that out. And generally, I mean, any serious company of a decent size should have a domain strategy, and that goes into that. So, I mean, what is the best name and names that we should have? Whatever new extensions, they can be used. I don't see them yet. Maybe in the future it will be the case. I don't see them as a main domain name, but they can be used creatively. So you can say, and you do have like big brands doing that, where they would have, I'm going to struggle to just come up with an example. Should have thought about that earlier, but they would have, I don't know, they would have their main domain would be like example.com, and then on the example.blog they would have their blog. On example.run they would have creative ways of, and that's really cool. Or like for marketing campaigns, or different things, or for obviously for protective reasons, like if you see that some extension is getting popular, people are going there, you should secure your brand name in that extension. For different countries, you big brands have, you would go to Nike.fr in France, or actually automatically directs you to that, and you have your version of the site and the products, etc. for that country, and people like that. They feel you appreciate them, and you're doing their local thing, So those are all things that should be considered. You can have domain names for different like keywords or different campaigns, even marketing campaigns that are like a one-off thing, and you have a funny domain name for whatever reason. So there's just so many things you can do, and I mean there are the things that you can do that can benefit your brands. There are the things that I feel absolutely should do as well. So yeah.
Right.
Having a
Yeah,
serious domain.
I like the idea of using domain names with a little bit of creativity at the .blog, maybe even the .guru, and for specific marketing campaigns. I'm going to come to the last couple of questions to wrap all this up. Number one is, what the conclusion of this is, you really need to get your exact match with the .com. Are people then not worried, which is certainly what I was, is that I then present myself to you and say, my company's called Kalicube, I need the Kalicube.com, and the price immediately in your head goes from $5,000 to $20,000 because you know I need it?
Well, that really depends. I mean, one thing is, and I think we do even have a blog post on that, on like how to go about when you need or when you want a name. People sometimes go and check and they're like, oh, it's taken, or oh, it's whatever. And there are stories of people who bought or negotiated getting a name that was even in use by another company. There's nothing impossible, and you don't know until you don't ask. So that's definitely, I don't see any problem with that. There are different, I mean, it really depends. Like, so there are domain investors, there are people who bought domain names for some ideas that they have, and they're just sitting on them because they never got around to them, or maybe they think they'll get around to them, and maybe they'll be happy to even partner with you and do something with that name. There are so many different scenarios. So, I mean, you really don't know until you ask. On the what can you do about it? I feel a bit like and I do get that. I do get people saying, yeah, but why does it cost that much? Because there's only my company called that. For one, you don't know if there's only your company, and what's the story behind the thing, and maybe that person has some personal reasons for having thought of and registered that and keeping it for whatever. And even if they didn't, I feel it's a bit like, and I oftentimes give the example of, I live in Nice, and there's that huge apartment just outside our window that has a brilliant terrace looking out to the sea and whatever, and it was for sale for 10 million, then dropped to 7 million, and I think it's going back up again, whatever. And people are like, a lot of people would be like, yeah, but it's just sitting empty, they're not doing anything with it. Why not? They're not selling it cheaper, or why are they not just like giving it away for free? And it's like, somebody was smart enough to buy that when they could afford it, however many years ago, or keep it in their family because they were wise enough not to waste it like many people do with other things, and they have it, and fine. Yeah, okay, I think it's a bit stupid that it's empty and there are people who need a house, but it's theirs. They do whatever they like with it. And if they want to ask 7 million for it, they ask 7 million for it. If they want to ask 5, they ask 5. I have no idea. It's their thing. They do whatever they want with it. I can only call myself silly for not, or my family, thinking back, for not having bought property in this wonderful place, however many years ago. Yeah. So I guess if we were to apply that to domains, one, if you take that seriously, just the topic of what domain name am I going to use in the outset of when you're thinking about your name, your company name, your budget, and etc., you can obviously avoid that. And if you haven't, then think about ways how to go about it. I mean, if it's too expensive, most people are very open to like spread payments or creative ways. Or I mean, you're dealing with people. Ultimately, you're dealing with people. So I think there's always a way to discuss something that would be okay for both sides.
And I mean, one really interesting point that comes out of that example that you just gave with real estate is that your domain name is a piece of real estate, and what you actually build on it, the website, is the building, but the domain name is the piece of ground, as it were, on the internet that you own and that you don't rent, that you can control, and you can build whatever you want on it, and it needs to correspond to something logical in people's heads so that they can actually find you. That was absolutely brilliant. Now, I'll repeat at the end here, we've rebranded, and now the address for the podcast is brandedsearchandbeyond.com. We got the .com, but I don't think anybody would ever have thought of getting that before we invented the name of the podcast. So that was easy, and it cost me $15. Last question. Answer one or both of these questions. Question 1, how can your specialization help with branded search? Question 2, how does branded search tie in with your specialization?
Oof,
Choose one.
we're probably gonna kind of mash them up, I guess.
Okay, brilliant.
And
First guest of the year doesn't answer either question. She answers both at the same time. Brilliant.
yeah, no, I mean it's branded search, and I think why I like what you do is because for a lot of people, SEO is like that mystery thing that Google decides to do, and algorithms and this and that, and so many people, so many entrepreneurs approach it as what do I need to do? Like, what does Google say I need to do? And honestly, you were the first person when I have had you on my show that made me think, hold on a minute, it's the other way around. It's you telling Google what needs to happen. And in that respect, having that domain name and generally a huge part of that is consistency, which with branding and marketing generally is very important. And I think that's where it all ties in. It really is about consistency. It is about simplicity, and it is about doing things that are with your customer in mind, not with the algorithm and whoever. People are like so going crazy about that they forget that ultimately you are creating content, you're coming up with your name, you are creating whatever blogs, visuals, everything for your customer, and you have to make their life simple, and it has to be consistent because otherwise it's confusing.
Which is brilliant, because in fact Kalicube.pro was rubbish for my customers but brilliant for Google, because I educated Google. So as you said, I'm good at educating Google, but I didn't think about my clients. I didn't think about how that domain name would affect them, and my investment was in the wrong place. Right, Benny, thank you so much. That was brilliant, telling me that I got it all wrong and that I should have paid $6,000 right at the beginning.
You said
no,
it.
sorry,
you said
delightfully.
It. Confirmed it.
Thank you so much, Tatiana. I'm going to introduce next week, which is Dennis Consorte, How to Leverage Press to Build Authority on Google. I'm really keen on that because as part of brand SERPs and knowledge panels, the press news cycle is phenomenally important for authority, but also for educating Google. So I think Dennis is going to bring loads of incredible insights to the table. Could you pass the baton, Tatiana?
Yes. Do I have to do the thing like?
Yes.
Like,
well, you've done it now.
I should
like
have.
Yeah.
I should have prepared the thing. I have I have that thing with for Halloween. I should have prepared that. That would have been fun. Anyway, I'm passing. I'm passing the baton. There you go to Dennis Consorte. I actually looked him up before the show, and I noticed he has his name. So he has DennisConsorte.com and ConsorteMarketing.com. So for me, as I mentioned earlier, that means the guy means business. So definitely, I'll be looking forward to that show. Yeah.
Brilliant. I really like the fact that when you look at a domain name, you think that guy means business. Kalicube.com, that means that company means business. I'm really happy about that. It really makes sense. And I hadn't realized I was doing it, but I do it too.
Oh, no, I think everybody just does that. Yeah, absolutely.
We just don't realize it, but you've explained it. And now I'm going to think about it all the time. A quick goodbye to end the show. Thank you, Tatiana.
You're very welcome.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, everybody, for watching, and see you soon.